About 6 years ago, when my cousin James was 15 and I was 7, our parents left us to go to a wedding. They trusted him to babysit me for a while so they could get to the wedding on time. It was more of the parents' friend's wedding, so we didn't really have to come, and it seemed cheaper to leave us at home. It was sometime in fall, maybe the first week or so of November. He and I were playing games when all of a sudden we heard a scratch at the door. It was loud and animal-like. Something or someone wanted to get in. James got up and walked over to the door to check it out, only to have the door kicked. It was like something was trying to break the door down. James started to get nervous, and he looked at me. He looked pale as a ghost. To this day, I still remember the look on his face. He didn't say a word, but he quickly ushered me upstairs. It was only around 7 p.m., but it was dark, and he insisted that it was my bedtime. He tucked me into bed and went back downstairs. This was my aunt and uncle's house, and they hunted. They had a small amount of guns, and I could tell that James went downstairs to get one of them. I started hearing loud shuffling outside in the leaves, and I called for him to come upstairs. He was up and next to my bed in less than a second with a gun in his hand. I told him about what I was hearing outside and how I was scared. He looked outside and said there wasn't anything. By then, the scratching and kicking at the door had stopped, but I was still scared that someone or something was trying to get in to hurt us. James stayed in my room and assured me that we'd be okay, so I fell asleep, and from what I know, so did he. At around midnight, the shuffling started again, but this time, it was in the house. I immediately started to cry, and that woke James up really fast. He got up and walked out of the room and stood at the top of the stairs. Seconds later, I heard a gunshot, and then I heard a scream. He ran back into the room and blocked the door with everything he could find. I was still bawling my eyes out and barely registered what was going on. James sat next to me on the bed and tried to comfort me, but I couldn't stop crying. I kept wailing at the top of my lungs. After about a minute, we heard scratching at the bedroom door. James grabbed his phone and called the police, with me now trying to push him so that he was in front of me. I wanted to be far away from whatever that was. The scratching continued, and it seemed like hours till the police arrived. The police sirens were what scared whatever it was away. I don't remember much from what happened, and James only ever tells it when I'm not around. The scariest part is, I don't know if that thing was human or not. Either way, I still have nightmares about it. When I was in my early teens, my dad would drag us to Kentucky every chance he got. It seemed to me most of our trip was spent driving. Finally, we would arrive to my Aunt Lainey's house. God, I loved her. She had 9 kids. My cousin Ronnie decided he would tell us about an urban legend called the Lady of Trace Licking Hollow, or Holler as he pronounced it. Ronnie shared the following with us. Up on the outer ridge of this hollow, way above the tree line, lived a bitter old woman who hated everyone and everything. She was so full of hate that she started terrorizing her neighbors. She would steal people's pets and do God knows what with them. When she would pass a neighbor on the road, she would try to take a swipe at them as they walked along the roadside. As this woman got older, she started looking into people's windows, scaring everyone, but she would always disappear by the time any of the family came out of their house. Then one family decided they had enough. The father grabbed his hunting rifle and made the hike up to the ridge where the old lady lived. When he entered her property, something wasn't right. It was too quiet. Then he saw her lying out in the middle of her small garden, dead. Dead for a very long time. How could she still be terrorizing the whole hillside if she was dead? Ronnie also told me to stay away from the windows in the deepest part of night. I said okay, thinking this was just a ploy to get me to go to sleep and not get out of bed. You see, I'm a night owl. My mother says I've been that way since I was very young. So I walked upstairs and got in bed, but I couldn't fall asleep, so I started reading a book I brought. The last sound I remember hearing were the wind chimes outside at 3 a.m. I turned over to look toward the window, and I froze. There in the second floor bedroom window was the most hideous face I had ever seen. Matted long hair, skin so thin that some of it was there and some just wasn't. Red eyes, yellow teeth, and on the hag's head were horns. I was frozen. I didn't know what to do. I threw the blankets over my head and just kept praying the old hag would go away. The next morning, I came down for breakfast, and my aunt looked at me and asked how I slept. I said, okay, I guess. When my aunt left the room, my cousin Ronnie looked at me and said, Buffy, she always knows what's going on in her holler. Maybe it was all a dream, or maybe it was just some terrible nightmare. Either way, I don't think I'll ever forget that face staring at me through the window. About 3 months ago, I was babysitting my younger siblings while my parents were out. It was around 8 p.m. and everyone was in the living room watching TV while I was folding laundry in my room. My room is located in the back of the house, which becomes important later. While I was putting the clothes away, I heard a knock at my window. Without thinking, I opened the blind slightly and instantly my soul left my body. I was face to face with a pair of wide hazel eyes staring back at me. I let out an ear-piercing scream and ran to the living room to grab my siblings. I took them to my parents' room to hide. My siblings were confused and kept asking me why I screamed. Then I heard the back door. It sounded like it was practically shaking. I could also hear someone banging on the living room windows. My sister was already on the phone with the police, and my brothers were hiding under my parents' bed. I stood in the hallway with a long kitchen knife, trying somehow to protect them. Minutes later, the banging and shaking stopped, and I heard 2 people jump over the front yard gates. The police arrived 5 minutes later and took our statements. After that incident, my parents decided to get a really big dog from the local shelter, who we called Buddy. 2 weeks later, I was alone at the house with Buddy, getting ready for school. My school started at 10 a.m. that day because the underclassmen were taking state exams and high school seniors like me came to school later. I was feeding Buddy when I heard the front gates shaking. Then I heard footsteps walking quickly alongside the house and someone trying to open the back door. Instantly, Buddy's ears perked up and he began growling and barking like crazy. I was about to call the police, but then I noticed that the person fled. I guess Buddy scared them away. Unfortunately, the police never caught anyone, and I eventually forgot what happened. Then, a week ago, someone broke into my dad's car and stole the radio. Yesterday, I was up at 7 a.m. cleaning the living room and decided to let some light into the house by opening the curtains. Sometime later, I saw a truck slowly approach my house. I hid behind the bookshelf so the driver wouldn't see me through the living room window. The truck's windows were heavily tinted, but I could feel the driver's eyes staring at me, as if he knew exactly where I was in the house. He sped off quickly after that. I honestly don't know what's going on, and I hope it doesn't escalate.